Um, okay, so welcome to the Breakout Room for today. This session is all about finding out more about the Oxford and Cambridge admissions process and the experience of student life at these unis from students that are currently here, so you can get first-hand experience and insight. There'll be a quick 5-minute break in between. The talk is around about 50 minutes, so you can go for a stretch, get yourself a drink or something. And today we've got some pre-prepared questions from the UniReach teams and some ones that have been pre-submitted before, as well as any other ones that you want to submit during it. If you think of anything, just pop it in the Google form. I'm your chair for today. I'm Vicky. I'm from the see the snazzy UniPear logo from UniPear. I'm a second year English student at St Edmund Hall College, Oxford. And I'll let our lovely mentors introduce themselves today. If you just want to jump in, let the group know your name, your subject, where you're studying, and a little bit of your background before coming to Oxbridge. So whoever wants to take the floor.
Yeah, I can start. So I'm also from St Edmund Hall, Oxford, which I didn't realise that you were too. So I'm a first year studying biomedical sciences. I moved quite far to go to Oxford. I'm from Manchester, but it's been a really good experience.
Hi, I'm Etien. I'm an HSPS student at FITS in Cambridge, which is just a posh way of saying I do politics and anthropology. I came to Oxbridge or Cambridge from entire state educated background, which was, I thought there would be a bigger transition than there was. And yeah, it's been a lot of hard work. It's been very rewarding to come here.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm a first year English student studying at UNIV, which is short for University College in Oxford. And I came from Essex, so not like too far from Oxford, only a couple of hours. And I went to a state grammar school. So yeah, and I had to overcome a lot of like prejudice of being a female from Essex and the stereotype that you're not like as intelligent as other people and that you're more like Towie and into fake tan than you are into academia. So yeah.
Yeah, so fabulous. Thanks for introducing yourself, guys. So what kind of touched on there is we're going to start off with some of the myth busting first. Like Oxford and Cambridge often have a lot of myths and misconceptions surrounding the application process and what it's like to be a student here and what's the quote unquote typical type of person that comes here. It's understandable when kind of such a reputation is built around it, and you know it's a bit like, oh, what goes on? But first kind of question I want to address is one I think a lot of people might worry about before coming here because they hear that it's quite, you know, intense. Terms are short, but there's a lot of work jammed into it. So I guess the first one, maybe to Jess, the myth that Oxbridge is kind of all work and no play. Obviously you're first year and you know we have this discussion with the whole preface of, you know, this has been maybe a little bit of a weird year to be at Oxford, but what's been your experience so far of the work-life balance at Oxford?
I think you have to acknowledge that work at Oxford and Cambridge is intense, but I don't think it's any more intense than at another university. You just have shorter terms, which means you have longer breaks to catch up and to rest and recuperate and like finish your reading. And I've never felt that I'm overwhelmed and that I can't manage my work. And there's always extracurricular things you can do, and there's really something for everyone. Like, even though we've had coronavirus, I've got really involved in student journalism. And so I edit one of the papers and I write a column on another one. And that's like a really good thing because it comes off my own interests with like being an English student, but it also gives me the opportunity to interact not only with people from my year group, but people from like across the whole university, across every year group. So it is work, but and the work is so fun anyway, like, because you're doing a subject that you're really passionate about and that you love. And so it is work, but it's not like there's no opportunity to do other stuff as well. And that's no different if you went to another university.
Yeah, I think that's very true. What you're saying about if you know, like the subject that you're doing, you'll like doing the work. And if you've done the Oxbridge application process, you know, you do have to like your subject if you don't want to get sick of it during the application process. What about you, Etien? How did you find the balance between work and?
I think in my experience, I'd have to disagree with the not getting overwhelmed by work. I think that's happened every single term, every single year. I'm a third year, so I've had some experience with getting overwhelmed. But I do think that there is the point that the work can be fun, and it kind of depends what you mean by play. Like if you mean just seshing a lot and going out a lot and having really good nights out, then the night out scene in Cambridge is pretty poor. But if you're talking about things that you just enjoy, and especially sports and stuff like that, the sporting facilities here are really good, then I think you can definitely strike that balance in a very healthy way. And I think that part of being productive is having those good breaks and having that, like enjoying stuff. I think you'd just be a bit miserable if you just worked endlessly with no breaks.
Yeah, but I think it's true as well about the nightlife, is that I would say there's kind of something for everyone, I would say. I mean, it's a bit different in COVID, but it's like especially like live music, theatre, comedy venues. I guess there's pubs and clubs, but you know, especially like out of COVID times, fingers crossed, hopefully by the time you guys apply, we'll be having a bit more of a more varied time. But I think there is something for everyone to enjoy outside of work, where you can, you know, meet people across years and that. So talking about like the types of people before coming to uni and before and like looking at Oxbridge might feel that they need to be a certain way or be the certain quote unquote Oxbridge type, that if you're not the so-called Oxbridge type, you won't fit in, which isn't true. So Samuel, how did you find settling into Oxford and making friends?
So I was really surprised because I applied very late, because I always thought I'm not the Oxford type. None of my mates were thinking of applying to scale of university, and then I just go for it anyway, thinking I wouldn't get, and I did actually get in, and so I was still quite worried about it. However, then when I did get to Oxford, I settled in so quickly, like much easier than I would ever have imagined. And it's like everybody there, or not everybody, but most people there wants to have a chat, wants to be mates with you. And I was really, really surprised, honestly, about how easy it was to settle in and to just get used to life. And to the point now where I'm missing it a lot, being at home at the moment. I can't wait to get back there.
Yeah, that's really nice. It's nice to hear. What kind of things at the uni made you feel welcome and made you feel part of it?
I think it's not particularly something that goes on. It's kind of just the atmosphere there, the friendly environment. But in terms of actual things, such as having dinner or well, this year we're going into the dining hall and eating, and it's not expensive. You get a 3-course meal for £5.50, I think, and the food is amazing. But it's just so nice to actually be able to socialise people, and even throughout COVID times we were able to do that because it's within an educational establishment. So I really enjoyed that, and just in general the friendly atmosphere. Yeah,
and definitely when we come back into more normal times, that's only going to get better, I would say.
Yeah.
Of course. So also something that people question, because the application process is quite different from the other ones that you might get on UCAS, is that it's quite long, can require a bit more work. So some people say that getting into Oxbridge is, again, quote unquote, impossible. So to kind of like debunk that, Jess, why did you want to go to uni, and why specifically did Oxbridge and Oxford appeal to you as somewhere to go?
I think because there's something to be said about studying a subject that you love among some of the best academics in the country, if not in the world. And that, to me, that was something that was worth fighting for. But also, I really liked the idea of the tutorial system, the idea that you can have one-on-one discussions or one-on-two discussions with someone who is a top-level academic about your subject and about things that are like interesting to you, and you can enter like really high-level debates, but it's done in such a casual, approachable way. I also, for me personally, because I study English, I wanted to do a more holistic course. At a lot of universities for English, it's modular based. So you'll pick a topic. You might do in your first year, you might do like the Brontes, or do like 19th century fiction, or do like the poetry of the Second World War. And I wanted to get a more broad grounding and to be able to study like everything in literature rather than just focusing on a single thing, because you don't know what you're going to like until you start studying it properly. And something that really appealed to me about the Oxford course is it starts in like the early medieval period and finishes in the modern day. So you really do study everything in literature. And I'm so glad I applied there, because Oxford is one of the only English courses where you read Anglo-Saxon texts in the original Old English. You don't read them in translation. And I'd never done that before. And that was incredible. And I'm now specialized. I'm doing a more specialized medieval course next year because of that. And I wouldn't know that if I hadn't applied to Oxford, because you don't get that opportunity at any other universities apart from Oxbridge. So I think it's weighing up how much you want to, the consequences and what you get out of the application, the university experience is worth the kind of emotional torture. And it is emotionally draining, but it's worth it. It pays off in the end.
I think what you said there is a good example as well of how much research you did before coming into the degree about, you know, exactly what you'll be covering, which I think is another good tip when you're thinking about is this course right for you, your interest, how much flexibility do you want in a course, how much contact time do you have, because it varies quite a lot between the different disciplines. If you're someone who, you know, prefers lectures a lot more teaching time, or if you like, say, more of a humanities degree where there's a lot of self-led reading, you can find out what style of learning you want to do and what interests you, then that will really help you on your way to deciding what course you want to do. So Etien, how did you land on knowing that that your course was the right one for you? How did that come about?
I mean, I knew I wanted to apply to Cambridge since like year 9. It was really early. It was one of those things where I went to I can't remember which college it was, and I found out they did your laundry for you, and I was like, wow, I need to come here. I ended up not going there, but yeah, I had my heart set on it for a while. And I think I always knew I wanted to do politics, but I wasn't sure exactly what. And to be honest, I'm not sure I did actually want to do politics now. The HSPS course teaches politics, anthropology, and sociology, and it's all under one department, it makes for a really interesting mix of people, mix of academics, and it's by nature very cross-discipline. And HSPS is unique to, it's not like the PPE equivalent, it is unique to Cambridge. And I think that is, I mean, it's one of the main reasons I wanted to apply, beyond the fact that, you know, some of the academics, after a supervision, there was one guy who was flying to Burundi to lead some like national university campaign thing. So there are some of those like really world-leading academics that like have made the time to read your essay in between their busy work. So I think it's that element of it. And now I'm actually doing anthropology, and I think I might prefer anthropology to my politics course. So it's that kind of breadth where, yeah, like Jess said, you find things out that you like, which you might not otherwise know through such interdisciplinary approaches.
Yeah, certainly, because it's about, I guess, that step up from A-level to uni, where things really, you can really specify what you want to do. Some things that you can do at uni might not be offered at A-level, but that shouldn't stop you from wanting to pursue what you want to do. Because Sam, you do biomed. That's not necessarily a specific subject you can do at A-level. How did you find, what did you think of the kind of step up between A-level and then studying biomed?
So I think it can be a little bit daunting at first, such as I remember in the first few weeks when I was getting set my first essays, and I literally didn't understand what the words in the questions meant, because I'd never seen them before in my life. But that's actually the case with a lot of essays that you get, and that's the whole point in the essay. You go learn what it is, and then it's quite cool actually when you can look back and think, well, actually a week ago I didn't even know what that word means, and now I can write a 1,500 word essay on it. But for me, I picked my subjects just because I liked the medical areas of biology and even chemistry, but I don't want to be a doctor. It's just not been something I've ever wanted to do. So I wanted to learn that kind of stuff, and it's more the behind the scenes work, such as actually finding out the basis of disease and how we'd cure them. So that's what I want to do. And for my course, you actually don't end with the title Biomedical Sciences. You either go into neuroscience or cell and systems biology. And one thing that it has taught me, I would have never thought that I would go to university and get a neuroscience degree. That's just not what I was aiming for, but that is what's going to happen. So I think you go to university open-minded, and as the other two guys have said, that you actually learn what you like while you're there, and you learn what subjects you actually do want to learn more of.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like you're constantly, it's obviously a learning curve, but there's a great deal of like personal reflection you can do as well while you're studying, and especially guided by if you're doing a dissertation or something where you have to focus on one subject for a while. You can really find out what you do love, and potentially maybe if you want to pursue it later in postgrad course or something. So before you even get to Oxford, you've got to show that you have a passion for your subject, and that you've read around and everything. And one of the things, the main way that they can see that is through your personal statement in the application process. So the personal statement is your, I think it's 2,000 odd character little personal statement that you'll submit through UCAS for applying to either Oxford or Cambridge. And they work a little different from other universities' personal statements. If you were in the meeting originally, so we went through and highlighted what you need to do in a personal statement. So we won't touch on the absolute specifics of doing it, but let's see, Etien, how was writing the personal statement for you? Saying like, considering how, you've got this really vast interdisciplinary subject, and what would your best tips be for writing something like that?
Yeah, so there was a lot of content that I could have gone into, because there's so many, all areas of the social sciences were on the table really. So I think just go deep, like one issue that you should talk about at length, maybe two that your primary interests, and just go deep on those. Show that you've done the reading about them, show that you've listened to podcasts. The LSE podcasts are really good for me. And just, yeah, it's all about depth, and it's not really about breadth. Like I did not know what social anthropology was when I applied, and I didn't know what it was until my interview when I was asked to read a text by a social anthropologist, and that was weird. That was a really weird text. So yeah, the breadth is not important. I think it's about the depth of knowledge and just your ability to get used to complex ideas and show that you are dealing with complex ideas in your personal statement. And also I think with Cambridge, this was a while ago now, I think there's something called the SAQ or SPQ or SQP, something like that, which I don't know if they do for Oxford, but it's like a separate mini personal statement that you can do just for Cambridge, which I think they're still doing, which you can use to have a more general. So, for example, if I was applying for politics and international relations, there'd be no point talking about sociology in my personal statement. So you can have a slightly more general personal statement and then show your specialization more in the, I think it's called an SPQ, but honestly, I don't know. But yeah, I think just depth of knowledge is the most important thing by far for your personal statement.
Yeah, SPQ definitely rings a bell. I remember thinking for Oxford, I was like, is there an OPQPL? But no, there isn't for Oxford. But if you want to find out more about any the admissions requirements, they all make it very clear on each course page website. If you're doing your research on the University of Oxford website or University of Cambridge website, if you're interested in finding out what all these terms mean around SPQ and whatever, it's all laid out very clearly on there. If you want to get a kind of grip of what the timeline is and what is required. And then also with thinking more of a, so Etien, you obviously did a more humanities-based personal statement. Sam, how was writing a science-based one? What kind of resources did you find useful to mention on it? And what do you think the tutors were most looking at, were most taken by in your personal statement?
So for a science one, it's particularly going into a research-based subject, you've got to show that you're interested in research. So what I kind of heard, like, oh, you've got to read a book or whatever off people. So I actually listened to an audio book whilst I was working, which was called The Selfish Gene, and that was it wasn't entirely relevant to what I'm doing now, but it's just to show that you're interested. And I actually was reading up on articles, and then I came across an article that was actually it was written by a professor at Oxford, and I found it really interesting. So I thought, oh, that's probably quite good to put in, because then it looks like, well, it shows that I'm reading their research as well. So I put that in. It was about something interesting that was found about multiple sclerosis. And I had 4 interviews in total, and in every single interview, they asked about that one sentence, which was basically about what I'd seen that was interesting in the article. So you can really shape your interviews by putting things in your personal statement that actually interests the tutors as well, because they hadn't heard of this. So they were asking, oh, that's interesting. What did you find out about? And I think that's the key thing. You've got to make the interviewers want to talk to you. If you're not interested in them, then realistically they're not really going to want to teach you for 3 years at least. Whereas if they find you interesting as well, and you're showing yourself as somebody that they would want to teach, then that really helps you out. And I actually spoke to my tutor recently about what made him pick me, or not just me, but what makes him pick people. And he said the ambition that people have is the key difference. So he said it's quite easy to tell someone who's just read up on a lot of textbooks from somebody who absolutely loves the subject. And he said he wants to teach people who love the subject, and you can't blame him for that.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to be said about, even like you said, reading that book that might not be directly related, but I think they want to see kind of, the synapses about you making links, like even if it's not something that's directly your field, you're thinking about how does your subject kind of relate to the world around you. You're constantly thinking about how, what else could be included in thinking about it. Apologies for my arm keep disappearing, this green screen, it's not very good. So you said interviews. I'm going to just put a pin in interviews for now, because before we skip to interviews, one other thing that people have to do is admissions tests, which are subject specific. I see the joy on Jess's face there, which was the English literature admissions test. So do you want to just talk us through briefly about what was involved in the test, how you prepared for it, and some of your top tips? They can be like general or subject specific for how to feel confident when it comes to taking these tests.
Well, my biggest bit of advice I can give about the admissions test comes from personal experience, and it's important they're important, like every part of the admissions process is important, but the point of the Oxbridge admissions process is that you are assessed holistically. So your personal statement, your written work, your teacher reference, your admissions test, your interview all gets taken into account in your admissions process. So like you want to do well on all of them, but if you do badly on one of them, don't think it's the absolute end of the world, because I completely bombed my ELAT. Like I did so badly, and I'm not saying like Oxford perfectionist badly where I got 80%. I'm saying I was in the category of this person won't get offered an interview unless they have significant other factors that suggest that they should get one. So like my biggest bit of advice is, obviously it's important, but it's just one part of the process, and you shouldn't like put all of your pressure and all of your stress onto this one thing, because every single part of the process will inform them about yourself. But basically what you have to do in the ELAT is you get given 6 passages across like varying ranges of English literature, and you have to pick 2 of them and compare and contrast them in any way that you see fit. And if I was to go back and to do it again, I would say to myself, don't try and be clever. Don't try and do what you think they're going to want to be reading, because I don't know what happened. I just had a really bad day. Like I came out of it and started crying. I was like, it's awful. I'm never going to go to Oxford. My life's over. And but what I think I did was I tried to think, oh, what are they going to want me to do? So I didn't pick the poems that went best together. I picked the poems that didn't go well together and was like, I'm going to say some clever thing about why everything's connected. And that doesn't help. So take a breath. If something's obvious, it's obvious for a reason, like because everyone's brain works differently. And so that's one bit of advice. The other bit of advice I would say is just, you get half an hour reading time. Take all of that half an hour reading time. Don't start writing, because an hour-long essay, an essay that you write an hour is very different to an essay you write in an hour and a half. Like you don't want to be writing an essay that should be an hour long in an hour and a half. It's just going to sound contrived and your points won't be as clean. So take that half an hour reading time, reread texts, look for like connections, but look for ones that aren't so clean cut. So don't just compare a poem with a poem and say they're similar because they're a poem. Well, obviously it's the same genre. So try and think outside the box, but don't try and be clever. Don't write about something that isn't there, basically. But my biggest advice is don't stress about it. It's just one part of the process. And if you do badly in it, then I can't promise, but if all of your other stuff is really strong, then they will still look at you. They're not going to see, oh, that person failed their admissions test, therefore we don't want them.
Yeah, I would definitely emphasize the point that these applications are not being fed through like a computer algorithm. It's not a case of like, oh, you're in the, say, 40th percentile for this, that's an automatic. They are read by actual tutors, and you know they are, because it always gets around Michaelmas, like the first term, and always like, I'm so sorry, I'm so stressed. I have to read a billion admissions forms and have to think about lovely, nice things to say about everyone. So they do take the overall grand view of everything you do and put it into consideration before you might get invited to interviews. Now, everyone, I feel like you ask about interviews, has got their own, oh, well, actually, story about what happened at their interviews. You might see a lot of stuff that floats around about questions that are like, if you were a fruit, what fruit would you be? And why is it a banana? Like stuff that's designed to psych you out. But I would like to say before we get into it that I feel like Oxford and Cambridge interviews are there to test how you think, like just see how you think, how inquisitive you are, how you can, if you can be taught. I remember someone saying here, like, is the tutor going to be able to teach you? Are you going to be receptive to learning? You don't have to be, they don't expect you to be the most knowledgeable person in the field, because that's what you're there to do. You're there to learn with lovely world-leading academics. So when it came to interviews, Sam, how was the experience for you? What did your interviews look like? What sort of questions did they present to you? And did you have to solve any problems or anything like that?
Yeah, so I had 4 interviews, 2 at St. Catherine's College and 2 at Teddy Hall. At St. Catherine's College, that's where I stayed over for a night there. That is actually where I applied to, but I didn't apply there for any reason. I literally just picked a random one because I didn't know about any of them. So I got there and it was quite a nice experience, actually. I wasn't expecting to, after all the worries about not fitting in, I wasn't expecting to meet a lot of people that I was getting along with and stuff. So I did, and that was nice. However, one thing that I noticed that I'd gone and I thought, yeah, I'm going to dress up smart. I'm going to wear a nice suit. And it was strange. I didn't actually think, but most people actually wore like chinos, a shirt and a jumper. So I was like, no, I'm not wearing my suit now. I'm going to look overdressed. Went into them interviews, not actually fully feeling myself because I wasn't wearing what I felt like I felt smart in. And I completely blew those interviews. They just didn't go well for me, and there was some odd stuff happened in them that didn't really help. But then I went over to Teddy Hall. You get a completely fresh start at the other college that you interview at, and put my suit on and felt myself, and they just went so much better. But in terms of the content of the interviews, every single one of the 4 had the exact same structure. So they started off saying, "Hi Sam, how are you? Did it take you long to get here?" And then they'll ask me a few basic points about the beginning bit of my personal statement, which is more just about yourself. That's only brief, and then that's just to kind of make you feel welcome. And then each one, they had either like a diagram on or an actual question, and they'd show it you and say, "What do you think of this?" Or it might be an image of something, and they'll say, "What's that?" And you have to work it out. And then so then when you answer that, they say, "Well, how does this relate to this?" Or "What happens to this?" And they'll keep on asking questions until they can't really ask any more questions. And then they moved on to asking about further down my personal statement, which was the research bit. And then from there, it kind of develops, you kind of shape the interview with your answers, and it turns into more of a discussion. Well, I did for mine anyway, in terms of a science one. But yeah, you can definitely, so they definitely start the interview with the question they want to ask, but from there, it's a discussion, and they will ask you stuff that relates to the answers that you're giving. So you definitely can shape it. But my key bit of advice would just be to go in there and be yourself, because that's what I did wrong on my first interviews. And I am so glad that I got into the college that I did get into. But that's, if you do bottle one of your interviews, don't worry. Just if you do have interviews at more than one place, just go into your next one, and it's completely clean slate. The colleges don't talk to each other regarding the interviews, so that's quite nice actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very like individual. It's not a one size fits all interview. Do you know what I mean? Everyone comes out of it feeling different. They could ask you the exact same questions as everyone else, and everyone will respond differently. But that's where the vibe comes from. I remember in my one, I was just so nervous. When I get nervous, I laugh a lot, and I say what I see. And as I went out the room, I went, "I love your chair. It's really jazzy." And then that chair, I ended up in the same room as that chair when I had my first class, and I got flashbacks. And I was like, "Why am I here? Why am I here?" So embarrassed. Clearly they didn't mind though, because I'm here. So we've got about 3 minutes left. Apologies for that, because we did start a bit late and the breakout room is going to end in about 3 minutes. I just want to check in with St. Bede's. Don't turn on your audio or video or anything, but can you just let me know in the chat if you've got any questions at all in the last 3 minutes? Because I've checked the Google form. It doesn't look like there's any that are submitted, but I just want to check if St. Bede's is still there. Someone be able to just type in the chat. Okay, so we've had a question. Is it difficult to find the right course for you? So jump in, anyone who wants to take that.
I would say a little bit, in the sense that a lot of the names that Oxbridge and Cambridge use for some of their courses are a little bit obtuse. And yeah, like human, social, and political sciences is a very complex way of just saying sociology, politics, and anthropology. So you do have to do some like delving into your subjects and what the actual course content of those subjects are, because it's not often exactly what you think. And I also think that some people will often overlook courses that might be right for them, like land economy is one that we have at Cambridge, which is kind of this weird middle ground between like geography and law and stuff like that. I'm still not entirely sure what land economists do, but there are these kind of niche, I won't say weird, there's these niche subjects, and I think you do need to put some energy and time into looking at all the options available to you and actually understanding what the course material for each of those courses are. Because when I first heard about land economy, I was like, wow, that sounds so boring. Now that I've gone through the years a little bit and I've spoken to people who do land economy and I've had to look at some of their content, it actually seems a lot more interesting. So yeah, definitely look at all the options available, and it will take some time just to demystify what some of the courses are. But I think that's just the nature of the beast, really.
I think there's something to be said as well about do what you're passionate about, and you'll know like what the right course is for you. Because for ages and ages and ages, I wanted to apply to do law because I want to be a barrister or an attorney. And I was like, if I do that, I need to do law. And I was really disappointed for the whole time of my application. I literally changed my personal statement because I was like, I don't want to leave English behind. I want to, if I'm going to spend £9 a year, I want to study something I love. And then I looked into the options of doing a law conversion, or if I want to work in the States, like studying a master's in law over there. And I'm just so happy I made that decision. Like, I'm so happy that I'm not studying law right now, because it's just so nice to be at Oxbridge studying with the top level people in something that you are genuinely passionate about. And I think once you understand what you're passionate about, you'll know that it's the right course for you, because everything will just feel absolutely right.
Yeah, and to like jump off of kind of like the research you were talking about, what would you recommend for a year 12 student to be doing right now to prepare that application for Oxford? Anyone can jump in. We've only got a minute or so left. Read. Yes.
Start thinking about things like differently as well. So start questioning in your classes, ask teachers questions, be like, why have you said that? I remember I got through a phase when I was getting ready for interview, and every time my English teacher made a point, I was like, why are you saying that? And so yeah, read and question.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you very much for our mentors speaking to us today. So please, I hope this has been useful for you. This breakout room is going to close in about 10 seconds. Thanks so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for telling me you're 19 people as well, because that confused me. So yeah, we'll go head back to the meeting now. So goodbye.
Again, can we ask you, if you are a student or a teacher, can you just turn off your camera and your mic, because we will begin recording again in just a moment.